Good morning, Vikings fans. Woo-wee! This is Morning Joe's. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and Purple Territory Radio.
Wow, someone's had caffeine this morning.
Yeah, a little bit. I mentally prepared myself for our guest, who I believe will be on later this week. I'll update everyone on that in a second, but the person that is here is Mr. Joe Oberly, who was at the game on Sunday night.
How you doing, Joe?
Relieved, I think is the word. I'm not super jazzed about everything, but I'm relieved. I really wanted them to win that game for a million different reasons, obviously. And it was, a good win, so I feel good about it. The schedule's a little rough. I don't necessarily understand some of the statistics about the Vikings having like an 80% chance of making the playoffs, but we'll get into that. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was pretty excited. I wanted to win, the Vikings to win. They needed to win. It was a must-win. They don't win that. I think they're talking like the Packers are this morning about their season being done and blah blah blah. They're not necessarily talking about their coach being in trouble, but their season would be a huge uphill climb, and it would be even harder to climb when you're not mentally ready to do it. And a win like this can really propel you forward. I will say though that as excited as I was Sunday night, full disclosure, I left at halftime so I could watch the second half with my son in person here at home, and I was there for the first half, but I enjoyed it. It was fun to see him get all pumped up about it. So, but I mean, as I've been analyzing the game since then, I didn't really consider this as much in my game wrap that the Vikings played great. They played very well. They played great on offense. They played very good on defense, and even had some special team bonuses. But the Packers gave them a few gifts. The muff punt was a gift, and the Rodgers was not Rodgers. He missed one. Devontae Adams wide open in the end zone. He never does.
Late touchdown, yeah, or what would have been a late touchdown.
Yeah, and then he got the going forward on 4th and 1 after they were really just combobulated and they had dried there. Now Harrison Smith made a great play, so you got to credit him. But there was just some uncharacteristic things, Packer things in that game that helped out the Vikings. I'm not saying they would have lost, because the Vikings could seem to move up and down the field at will for much of the game, but I have to temper my enthusiasm about how well they played, because the Packers kind of played pretty poorly.
That's it. And really quickly, I'll mention that Joe is the editor of Purple PTSD Vikings Territory, and he writes for thesportspost.com. Check out the Sports Post. You do a lot of great stuff there, so people should definitely check that out. That's a lot of my relief too. I felt like a lot of things did go the Vikings' way in this game. The injuries to the offensive line helped a lot. The injuries to the Packers' secondary definitely helped a lot. It just, I don't know if Rodgers, if his heart is in it, or
where does it look? Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it just feels like he's very frustrated. To be completely honest with you, I half expected, not really, but I wouldn't have been super surprised had he not taken that contract extension, and kind of thought, well, I'll wait and see if things start to change for the better. There was a lot of stuff this offseason about Rodgers not being consulted on moves like the firing of the quarterback coach, which seems like something he should have been informed on. And there was a great, during the first half, I believe, so you probably missed it, but they Collinsworth was showing, it was the pregame, and they were showing this Packers podcast guy it's from a show called The Packcast or something like that, and he was showing all of these different scenarios from the past decade where the Packers were basically up against the wall, and Rodgers had a catchphrase for each time, like They were, sub 500 at this time in the season, like 10 years ago, and Rodgers came out and threw for like 5 touchdowns. And then the post game on the field, the interviewer said, "What do you think that this tells the rest of the league about all these doom and gloom about the Packers?" And he went like, "Shh," like a shush. And there was 2 other ones that were like really catchy, and they juxtaposed that with this week. They asked him the same thing. One of the Packers interviewers, who must know Rodgers relatively well, said, "Are we going to get a catchphrase this time?" And he said, Rodgers said, "Those things have to happen organically, and they have to be realistic." And the guy was like, "Oh, so you're saying like there's no hope for the rest of the season?" And he's like, "Well, I don't even really know how to answer that, but when I said that, I felt that way." So he was implying that maybe he didn't have the confidence in this team that he did those 3 other examples. And, who knows? Maybe he's just fed up with what's going on there. They compared some of the offensive changes that have been made to, like, the Saints. And I think it was the Patriots, and saying, like, when you have this amazing quarterback, but you're running an offense from 1996, like, something's got to give. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of unhappiness across the board. The fans, I'm sure, are just despondent, but it seems like the team's relatively dysfunctional as well, and I don't know how to fix that.
Well, you don't have to.
Well, but doesn't everybody own the Packers?
Yeah, that's
they
true.
They have shares.
I was on KTOE radio in Mankato with John Myers this weekend. Shout out to him. We had a great conversation. He's a Packer fan by nature, but he grew up in Mankato with me. And anyway, we were talking about it, and I've just seen you have seen a little bit of a change. They really, so many times I've been watching. I watch the Packer games quite often, and Rodgers is doing things uncharacteristically, like underthrowing wide open players like he did on Sunday, and in other places where you expected him to throw, they're handing off to Aaron Jones and really trying to make an emphasis on getting the running game as part of it. And I get that. I think they're doing a little bit of that here in Minnesota, but it's so bizarre because all of a sudden you think, okay, here Rodgers is going to throw here, and they hand it off, and it's reasonably successful. Jones has been good. There's no two ways about it, but maybe there is some kind of change of philosophy in the offense of scheme room. What they're doing, and maybe he's not on board with it. I don't know why he wouldn't be, if in fact that's what it is, because it would take pressure off him. He's not as mobile as he has been in the past, probably due to his knee. Maybe his knee is having contributing to some of those misses he's making, because you never see him miss a wide open receiver like that. You just don't. And Adams had a good, 2 to 3 steps on the defender and on Holton Hill, and Rodgers feasts on that. So it's I think there's a combination. Maybe he's not totally into it. Maybe he sees the writing on the wall, and he knows there's going to be changes. McCarthy sure seems to be someone who's under the gun and under pressure. He's been, if you go on Packer boards and different places, which I like to do after the Vikings beat them. It's the same thing they've been saying for forever. In-game decisions from McCarthy and play calling and challenges that are either not taken or shouldn't have been. Just all these different things, and they've been on this guy forever. You got a new guy calling the shots rather than Ted Thompson, so maybe he's going to bring in somebody that he wants. It may just be they all know what's going on, and Rodgers is in fact, shining up his golf clubs and looking to. He's probably going to have. I bet he has some kind of procedure done on his knee. They never really said what happened. Yeah, and he's not the same player, so there's a lot going on there, and
he has some stuff in his personal life too that sucks. As much as I dislike Rodgers and root against him, the stuff with I don't know if you caught what his brother said after those fires in California. that stuff is rough for anyone to deal with, whether or not he's right or wrong. Airing that dirty laundry out in public, especially when the team is not doing as well, and you need to be on your P's and Q's.
My daughter caught me up on that since she watches Bachelor and that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what's going on there, and he does have a strange home life with his family. He's a bit estranged, it sounds like, and that is tough. I don't care who you are. You know, that stuff can affect you. And I mean, even Chad Greenway referred to that when we were, not that specific case, but when he was on our show last Tuesday. He talks about how you got to come to the ballpark every week and be able to put all that stuff behind you. And I'm sorry, that's kind of thing that's gonna stick in your head, especially if your brother's out there being public and probably trying to promote his own brand by ripping out his brother, which is pretty weak if you ask me. So
I could see why that would bother somebody.
Sure.
He's notoriously private as well, so that's part of it. But it just feels like things are in disarray in a way that they haven't been since he's been there, really. Collinsworth kept referring to it as the gift and the curse of having the best quarterback in the NFL, maybe the best quarterback ever. I didn't really agree with his logic, basically saying that, you have this great guy, but unless you win a Super Bowl every year, you're going to get criticism. I can see that, but that seems to be like complaining about, having the best race car in NASCAR or something. It is a huge gift, and I guess it just seems like we've brought this up. I have the last few weeks the Brady quote about his belief that if Rodgers played in this Belichick system, he'd have 7,000 yards a season, and that opened up this conversation about whether or not McCarthy is basically just kept that job because of how good Rodgers is. And there's got to be something there,
You brought that up last week, and I never did get to respond to it because I as much as that there may be some truth to that statement, I do think it's a little bit in response to the bromance between these guys, because just before that, Rodgers had come out and said that he's got 5 Super Bowl rings. There's no question. This is not even a discussion. So, I think a little bit of that is Brady hitting him back and saying, while there is some verifiable truth there, you don't know that. And Rodgers has basically had his way to do what he wants out there. And who knows that under Brady or Belichick, he might be a little bit more constricted as the way he wants to play the game. Rodgers is not, while he's a great pocket passer, he does so much by getting out of the, feeling the rush, getting out and ad-libbing in so many different ways. And Brady doesn't do that. It's a complete, he sits back and just fires from the pocket. I don't know. That doesn't discount what Brady's saying, but some of that to me is just a little bit of, thanks, man. Here's right back at you. So.
Yeah. Okay. And really quickly, I know we ran some ads last week and last night about Swartzen being on the show today instead of last Friday. Hopefully he'll be on later this week. I have a feeling, based on the gigantic jump in numbers from Friday, that people expected that. So I don't want people to think it's a bait and switch situation. We'll
he may still
get him on the show.
Reds, celebrating his victory. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. I wonder too. I don't know if you heard what Favre said. They interviewed him before the game.
No.
He was talking about his time in Green Bay, and then he said, I never thought I'd be, a Viking, and then I had that magic in a bottle for a short time there. And he said, I really believe that these two teams, the winner of this game will basically be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Oh, wow.
And then they showed a quick cut at the end, and he goes, or they could both miss the playoffs. What the hell does Brett Favre know? And it was really funny.
Chris Collinsworth earlier, and I got a bone to pick about him later in the show if we talk about Adam Thielen, but it wasn't on the agenda, but it should be. So anyway, keep going. We've gotten a lot of Collinsworth these last couple of weeks, and I have a very strong feeling that most people hate him. They a lot of them do, it seems like, and I've never had that huge a problem with him. Ever since I've heard all the criticism, started to pay attention. I mean, I grew up with watching him play, and I always enjoyed him.
Was he a receiver or a tight end?
Yes. A tall wide receiver for Cincinnati. He went to two Super Bowls with him, but lost both times. But and he seems like a decently positive guy, and I just wondered always what the criticism was. And the more I pay attention, the more I understand some of it. But he came out with the statement saying that Adam Thielen's not athletic, and so. And someone asked Thielen about it after the game. He goes, "Really?" I tell him to watch the tape, and that's what I was texting my brother. I said, "My God, dude, look, open your eyes. You think that catch he made with in amongst two people, twisting back and turning his body on that trajectory and that speed with to one guy thinking for sure it's going to be an interception, and that you don't think that's not an athletic move?" Maybe he doesn't, leap out of the building or something. I don't know what he's looking for, but this guy, and then his touchdown is a twisting turn, backwards dive over the zone.
And he got rocked.
Yes, that's not only athletic ability. That's the thing they always talk about. It's presence of mind. He knew what he needed to do to get in the end zone, and he makes that strange, slightly risky move to do so. He does it constantly. He makes late hands catches of Cousins passes in tight windows constantly. He never gives up on that ball. He never, he makes every pass catchable. If he can't get to it, it's because it can't be gotten to. I don't know. Maybe, I'm sure I say stuff on this show because it's live that I would like back from time to time, but there's maybe this narrative out there, and it's because it's been said before, but it's just BS. And I just go,
I didn't hear that.
2 weeks in a row. How do you not? You watch him 2 weeks in a row and not know that he's an incredible athlete.
On the night that Randy Moss is inducted or shows up to do his Hall of Fame thing, and Thielen breaks his record for 100-yard games in a season with a lot of games left, and it's not just like he's some slot guy who gets the ball 12 times a game. He can get a lot of touches, but he's probably the most complete receiver in the NFL in regards to every single thing that he can do. And he might not have Moss's speed or ability to go up for jump balls at a superhuman level like Moss did.
He's not a freak.
Yeah. He's not from a different planet. But I would, there's very few, if any, guys in the NFL that I would trade straight up for him at the wide receiver position.
No way. The guy's not gonna. He doesn't give up on a ball. He is not going to half run a route. It's just not in his makeup. And we all know that Randy Moss did kind of run some half routes, and he was a little shy going across the middle for part of his career, and he. Randy Moss is, by far, in my eyes, the greatest receiver ever athletically. He might not have all the records, but my goodness, so don't get me wrong there. But he's not perfect by any means, and I love the work ethic of Thielen. I talked about it many times in this thing. You come up, Randy can talk about all, the odds against him, making it in the league, but he's a superior gifted athlete. Well, Mr. Thielen had plenty of odds against him, and he just has the idea that every catch is my resume builder, and I'm going to go out there and get it. Even there was one earlier that Cousins just airmailed to him. He tried to do that and got a little closer to it. He is the kind of receiver every quarterback's got to love. And
there's very few. I bet, just off the top of my head, there's maybe been once or twice where there's been an interception thrown to him in regards to his ability to either catch it or not let the DB make a play on it. He's not going to give up on a route halfway through and just let the ball kind of leave his quarterback out to dry, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, he's bailed out his quarterback more than once, and every time that he fumbled, I guess he's got 4 fumbles, and he's caused the drive to end in that regard. He's extended how many more because he's making impossible catches, so. I don't know why he says something like that. So I had to.
No, it's insane because we probably had the best live chat of the season Sunday night. It was awesome. We had a ton of readers and listeners that were there, and a lot of people that were thanking us for doing something like that, which meant a lot to me because I always thought that was like the coolest thing to do, because a lot of message boards or like Reddit, they're not really built for live events. They're more built for conversations over a period of time. And a lot of people kept joking about Thielen not being an athlete. And it's such on a local level, at least from my point of view, it's something that drives everybody crazy. But maybe on the national level, they just haven't picked up on that yet. That, like, A, it's this really bad take, but B, it's pissing everybody off.
They aren't paying attention. It's like they haven't had to. He's not one of the household names like Antonio Brown or Julio Jones, and he's in fact outplaying them. And he's not Stephon Diggs, who made the Minneapolis Miracle and put his own brand on the map. He's just this lunch pail guy that comes to work and just keeps doing it time after time. And it's just kind of a little bit of laziness to pick up on something like that. Just take a look. The guy was in the state championship, won the state championship in golf in high school. He played for a football team
Did he?
He played for their football team and he played for their basketball team that both went to the section finals. This guy is a 3 to 4 sport athlete. He played baseball until
it's like Joe Mauer.
Golf kind of took over in his in what he was doing. So it's just silly. Some people say the thing comes out of racism because he's not black and he's not an athlete, and I don't even want to go there because I think it's bullshit, and I just say take everybody for who the heck they are, and this guy is just everything he does, he proves you wrong. So stop saying these things, please.
It's good bulletin board. You said last week, Zimmer loves to be underestimated. He loves to be the underdog, and I think that ties in perfectly with guys like Thielen, who, speaking of Tom Brady, they have similar maybe chips on their shoulder, where they're never, Thielen is never going to go into a season and say, yeah, I'm content, I'm good. He'll say, I have these things to work on, and I'm trying to get better. And a lot of guys say that, but they don't mean it. He means it. And
I'm sorry, Joey.
No.
You don't get to this level if you're not an athlete, and you don't get to the top of this level if you're not a pretty darn good one. So
my dad said that Sunday night. He said everybody playing is an athlete. Stop saying that. And then he also said stop using the term going vertical. He said is Cousins throwing the ball straight up in the sky? And I just started cracking up. That made me laugh. But it did feel like more of a complete game from the Vikings than we've seen recently. Cousins, I don't know what it is. Let's actually, because I don't want to step on any of the Tuesday's tales of the tape. Let's get into that.
All right.
And
give out my first one. It's Cousins had great stats. He was 29 of 38 for 342 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and a 129.5 rating. He bested Rodgers, who finished 17 of 28 for 198 yards and 1 touchdown pass and 94.0 rating. In both games that they played, he's doubled and tripled what the output of Rodgers. Now, granted, in both games, Rodgers he's coming off the injury in the first game with that. That was the second game of the year, so I cut him a little slack there. But everybody's saying he's back. Look at him run. Look at him move. Well, he got his lunch taken from him by Kirk Cousins, and it was maybe we're gonna have to just live the way with Kirk Cousins. Granted, the Vikings weren't playing the Chicago Bears defense on Sunday night.
Yeah, there's that.
Defense is not. So you got to factor that in. But dang, Cousins better do that then against this defense that isn't good. Do we expect him to go for 342 and 3 touchdowns against the Bears defense? No. Do we expect him to play better than we did? Yes. But you have to that's part of it. You can never lose sight of the fact that what the other outside of the team on the field is. But he did what he was supposed to do with his numbers.
Yeah. So 2 games against the Packers, he's at 767, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a lot of the not going into this game wasn't just that the Vikings, I think, were 0-3 in primetime games this season, but that Cousins has historically shrunk in big games or primetime games. And so the one thing that stood out to me about that, and we talked about this last week on the Purple Journal podcast, I openly asked, and I believe Luke answered the question. I said, do you think that, Cousins talking about the pick 6 and how that happened, with Zimmer's explanation being that, sometimes he won't take the open receiver because he's trying to pick up maybe 10, 15 more yards and he forces it.
Yep.
And I said, do you think that maybe he'll change? And Luke said, no. I think, Cousins is who he is and you kind of roll with the punches. But there were multiple times in the game that Collinsworth pointed out that Cousins did just that he was, checking down to his second option, especially in the first half, and maybe limiting some of the bigger plays they could have had, but also kind of cutting some of those disastrous plays from his repertoire. And granted, it's only one game, but, if he can replicate not the yardage or the gaudy touchdowns or any of that, I mean, he's clearly got the Packers number this season, but just limit the mistakes and even play halfway decent, that bodes extremely well for the team moving forward.
It does. Did Collinsworth say that he wasn't an athlete? I'm just curious. I think Zimmer talked to him this week a little bit about it. He talked to a number of things, and he talked to him about what I'm going to talk about next. But, yeah, I think that's I think you can kind of put something like that into your head. They should have done it against the Bears. He should have been taking checkdowns and not looking for home run balls because that's the kind of defense that puts you into Drew Brees mode and short passes, quick outs, quick decisions and not looking taking what the defense will give you and that kind of thing and he was able to do it this week, and like you said, I hope it bodes well for the future. My happiest Kirk Cousins stat was, however, was that he rushed 6 times for 17 yards. It took him a while for them to even do it, but it took Zimmer telling him to do it. But it was great. I have been talking about this for several weeks. I think. When I watch the game, and I say it afterwards, but so why doesn't this guy run? Why doesn't this guy get out of the pocket? I mean, I know he's not Mitch Trubisky, and we certainly saw that on Sunday, but, there were so many times when he could run, and he chooses not to, and it's a little frustrating. I also question why isn't the scheme to get him outside of the pocket right out of the gate, roll out and get some of those quick, young athletic linemen out there blocking for him out there. Because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the touchdown to Thielen one of those? He rolled out, right?
It was, and he pulled the coverage towards him, and then he threw it to Thielen. So he hesitated long enough for the corner on Thielen to drop off to where I think the safety had to try to stop him from the 5, and the linebacker also hit him too. But that was exactly it. Naked bootleg.
That's what happens when you do that. When you get out, Now, granted, I know that's out of his comfort zone, and I don't think he's as good a passer on the run as other quarterbacks are. Certainly not as Rodgers is, or maybe even Trubisky. Trubisky he looks comfortable out there on the wing, running and planting a foot in the ground and throwing.
You know what's funny though? Really quickly, they showed a graphic after that touchdown of when Cousins rolls out of the pocket, and his numbers were he had 1 interception against I think 5 or 6 touchdowns and a really high rating. So that is something that maybe I remember in the preseason he was getting lit up on those naked bootlegs, just getting killed, and maybe that made them stop wanting to do them, but it seems like they work.
It's funny. Zimmer had said that in his press conference when he was asked about it. He said, "Yeah," he goes, "I'm not sure why he doesn't do it more because he was doing it quite a bit in training camp to get away from the Vikings defensive rush." So it's funny that that's probably the reason why his numbers are pretty good. Maybe it's a small sample size, but clearly he must not be comfortable doing it. But boy, he turned, put his foot in the ground, turned and fired that one to Thielen.
Yeah.
Had a great play, but that was a great play. I mean, because he got him open, and the sprint out helped that happen. You throw it to Thielen in there with a little bit of separation, he's going to catch the darn ball, and then even make an athletic play to get into the end zone.
Yeah, and it takes a little pressure off the offensive line too. Like you said, it gets them out doing things they want to do, being aggressors as opposed to being more reactive. And so it's something hopefully that they do moving forward. I know we talked a lot last week about people calling for DiFilippo's head, which seemed a little premature to me, but hopefully he's able to identify these things that work and keep building on them.
I hope so. You wonder. Sometimes it occurs to me. I mean, you even saw some plays there that we haven't exactly seen so far this season. I wonder if they probably do this. They have set a bunch of plays and they parcel only so many out, so that by the time they get to the end of the year, if they're thinking about making the playoffs, they have a few more things in their quiver that they can throw out there that nobody's seen. But who knows? That's why I talk about this stuff rather than call plays for the Vikings. My third tail of the tape is. Thielen 8 catches for 125, Diggs 8 catches for 77, and Rudy 7 catches for 63 yards.
Ooh.
He got those in the first half, and it was really interesting. They talked about coming in to the game that he was going to be an emphasis, which has made me happy that I was able to pick up Rudy on the waiver wire right before you could. So sorry, Bill.
There's a few of those too. There was another one, the running back for Melvin Gordon's backup. I don't know how long you've had him, but I went to nab him after watching Fantasy Football Live on Hulu, and I saw you had him as well. I'm like, Oberle again.
Yeah, I got him about 6 weeks ago. So he had a good game, and I needed some depth, so I grabbed him. So I'll take credit for that one. This one on Rudy was lucky. I was surprised to see him there. So anyway, who cares about my fantasy team? But that was so exciting to see.
Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean, we've been wondering. I wrote in my game wrap, if this game had a movie title, it'd be Kyle Rudolph, The Awakening. Where's this guy been? And it's there. He's a huge target. He can get open. He knows how to post up a defender and make a catch. He's got those big oven mitts for gloves that he can make grabs. And Cousins obviously. Maybe he's just like some of the other plays. He's looking for the big home run. He's looking past, that slot, 8 to 10 yard thing. And they must have made an emphasis of it, and they must have seen something against the Packers that would be open at what. It's surprising to me that he didn't get any. I don't think he even got any targets in the second half. Maybe
it didn't seem like it.
Yeah, but it saved their bacon in the first half. He was the guy.
We talked a lot about this in the preseason in regards to, Cousins is known to throw the ball around, spread the ball around to a lot of different receivers, but whether or not, the Vikings offense could support, speaking of fantasy, 4 or 5 really relevant players, and with, obviously only X amount of balls to go around, and it does feel like Rudolph kind of got lost in that shuffle. But there's things like this that do encourage me. Is as the Vikings are getting close to the playoffs. Apparently they have like a 78 to 80% chance of making the playoffs. Now, there's aspects and wrinkles of this offense, like Cousins rolling out perhaps, or doing a lot of stuff in the red zone or the infrared zone to Rudolph that aren't on tape. So maybe I'm not saying they're specifically holding on to those for some sort of long game, considering their record. But there are things that they can do that maybe teams can't really plan against as much because they haven't seen it. And Rudolph had over 10 touchdowns last year. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I picked for many fantasy leagues, and I think he ended up getting cut loose because there was just no production there.
Yeah.
Finally, my favorite defensive stat of the game: Sheldon Richardson, 7 tackles,
Yes.
2 loss, and 2 of which were sacks, obviously. And as I told you when I sent you an email, I said take that $4 million from Sharif Floyd and give him an extension, plus save a little for Anthony Barr. And if you read Chip Scoggins' column in the paper this morning, the Star Tribune, he said that Spielman should take some of that money, give it to Richardson and to Adam Thielen, because you're gonna have to extend, improve Thielen's a little bit. I have kind of been excited about Richardson since he came to town. I was kind of wary of him because he had the little trouble pass, and after a number of times looking across and at the guy in the locker room and talking to him and seeing him, how he talks with people. This is a good dude, and I think he really likes being here. Some of the quotes from in that story from him were pretty neat. He was talking about he goes, there's no stars here. I mean, they even sometimes don't play first round picks if they're not helping the team. He said there's none of that going on here. And he seemed to really appreciate that. It was kind of a telling quote. I think he and Elfline were on a conference call yesterday that I wasn't able to attend, but it's neat to see. I'd love to see the Vikings get him tied up. They gave him a proven contract this year. Well, not bad for $8 million, but if he can, give pressure in the middle, coming up the middle of that line, you got Griffin and Danielle Hunter coming in from the outside. My goodness, what a force to be reckoned with.
There was so much pressure just from those 4 against Rodgers. I think that was probably the most important component of this game, to be honest. I think that's what won it for him. I did want to add him to my 3 ways the Vikings will win last week, but he didn't end up making the cut. Mainly because I felt like he'd been a little quiet these past few weeks. He obviously splashed onto the scene the first few games and had these just like insane numbers, 13 pressures in one game, that sort of thing. And the Vikings defense was showing all sorts of crazy stuff. I think Collinsworth mentioned one where he goes, I can guarantee you that Rodgers has never seen that look before, the pre-snap look, which didn't end up being a blitz, but they had just this crazy combination of people lining up to do that. And
he's an athletic move, Joe. Sorry.
My question to you is, if it came down to it, would you rather re-sign him or Anthony Barr?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. It's probably something. In fact, that's what I told you. They could take some of that extension, give it to and then give some to Barr. But I really think they need Anthony Barr. First and foremost, get that guy signed, make him happy, and it's a tough call because Zimmer loves 3 techniques that can do that. That can disrupt. I mean, right now they've got the best thing going. They got Tom Johnson right behind him, who's also had a great season. And
that's true.
And maybe revitalize him, although Johnson's a bit older, and Sheldon Rich is the guy you want, but. Boy, I don't know. I mean, that's where Rob Brzezinski becomes the cap master. And
it'll be interesting to see because we only have $10 million in cap space as of this past week for next season. And I wrote about my all is not well in Vikings land. That was part of it. Was
that including the Sharif $4 million?
I don't think so because that was that news came out afterwards. So that does help a lot, but. It'll be interesting to see because I think Trey Waynes will be up too, and a lot of people have been comparing those contracts, whether they'll keep Trey or keep Richardson. And I do, obviously I think you were going to say don't say it about me saying Trey Waynes.
No.
But it's funny because during the live chat I said, man, Waynes is quietly having this amazing year. He's turning into a shutdown corner, and I think there were like 3 huge completions against him within 5 minutes of me saying that. But I can't imagine a team coached by Zimmer with all the work they put into Trey, letting that happen. The question just really is who is the most easily replaced. And it kind of sucks that Mike Hughes got hurt, because we would have been able to know more about his capabilities and whether maybe he'd be able to fill in for Trey. But I think Eric Wilson has done a good job filling in for Barr, and so.
But he's not.
I don't know.
No. You know, like there's things they do with Barr that they would never do with Wilson, like rushing the quarterback.
Yeah,
that's
true.
You know, it's a great question also about Trey Waynes, but I think it was demonstrated on Sunday that Trey Waynes can't go anywhere. You know, I mean, the old adage, at least the old Zimmer adage, never have enough decent corners is true. Look how many they've been great this year. They've had great depth there, and thank goodness. Even though Bolton Hill looked a little lost once he got into the game for Xavier Rhodes,
which was uncharacteristic. He played well earlier this season.
Just going to say that. I mean, it surprised me a little bit when I was scratching my head. I go, who are they going to put in? I said, oh, Hill, and I relaxed. And
Same thing happened here. My dad said, "Oh, don't worry. He's good. He'll fill right in." The next play was that near touchdown. So,
you know, and that's always a tough spot. You know, and as soon as one guy goes out, the savvy Aaron Rodgers is going to go right back at that spot. But
for sure,
and so all of a sudden, though, going into this week, their depth is pretty light. If coach the play, you had that. I know you had on the agenda to talk about him. He, I said this. He's done it many times where he looks like his leg is falling off and comes up the field, and then he shows up, as limited and then a full-time participant by the next week. And I'm not, that one looked like it could have been, it looked like a really bad hammy, but then Zimmer called it very mild. And the doctor came out, so it's just, but part of that is Zimmer being Zimmer. He doesn't like people telling him, more than he should know, until, he's got his own doctors to examine this guy's watching on TV. And I don't blame him. No offense, but you can't diagnose something from on TV,
No.
But,
the question is whether he, and I think as I'm asking this, I know the answer. I was going to say whether or not Rhodes perhaps overreacts to the initial injury, or whether or not he just is really tough and overcomes harsh injuries. And in asking that, I remember his ankle injury. The eye test was horrible. I thought he'd be out for the whole season. It moved in a way that ankles aren't supposed to move, and so
right.
I'm assuming it's the latter, which is that he's just a really tough dude, and maybe he overcomes injury really quickly. Maybe he's heals like Wolverine or something. But they definitely need him this weekend. That was the big scare.
Yeah,
oh god.
Be a little bit both there, Joe. I think he does. The initial injury looks bad with him almost every time. You think, oh man, it's the first thing because it looks his reaction to it. And, after he went off the field and he looked like, had a lot of trouble getting off the field, he was sitting on the trainer's bench looking at plays with Terrence Newman on camera. I thought, oh, God, he doesn't seem to be stressed out too much there. But then you hear people saying he was limping as he left the locker room, and so that wasn't good. And then you got this back and forth with Zimmer and the doctor yesterday, and it's like, I don't know. We all don't know what to think, but I think what you nailed it. There's a little bit of overreaction from him, and then there's a toughness in coming back. But I'll be honest with you, he didn't have a very good game in the first half.
No, he didn't.
And he still is hurt. Still, he's playing hurt right now because he's not the big time cover corner that we've come to know in recent years from him. So,
yeah, Adams definitely was winning that battle in the first half. He had the touchdown. Nearly every ball thrown to him he caught, and it's been that way this season for him. I'm not sure. They always say when you're at the top, it's all you can do is go down. He had an amazing season last year. He was, we're to the point where it was like Revis Island. No one would even throw his way. And
right.
I wonder what the disconnect is this year. If it is injuries, if it's
your talent doesn't fall off like that. In such a short time. It's got to be an injury. It's got to.
Yeah. One thing on the agenda that I just remembered that very well could have been the number one topic on this show if the game had ended differently was the decision by the Vikings to go for the touchdown late in the game as opposed to kicking that field goal. And it kind of ties into the first half and Dan Bailey missing those 2 kicks. Zimmer saying, going into the locker room, basically that he wasn't going to kick any more field goals and that he's not going to put the game in the hands of a kicker. You can just tell that Zimmer is so over this kicker stuff. And, just really quickly, in defense of Bailey, the first one was a bad hold. The second one was 51 yards. He made it. Then it got moved back to 56 yards. And then it was a roughing the kicker. And they should have let him re-kick it. They didn't. And so I think with the benefit of knowing that now, maybe Zimmer would say something different. And they obviously allowed him to kick a field goal after that. But, man, I liked the idea of the call. I just didn't like the call, I guess, is the way, I think that was the one that was batted down, knowing that things get batted down, knowing that teams are aware of their ability to do that, and just throwing into such a tight window when everyone's just all crammed in there like that. It was really, I don't know if you saw the end of the Steelers game, where they did the RPO and Roethlisberger got picked off by the defensive lineman, but it very well could have been picked off by the corner had the defensive lineman let it go through. Anyway, it was a horrible play, and that started with a bad snap too. That kind of offset things, but I don't think I've seen a lot of success from the Vikings throwing quick slot passes. That for a reason, and that reason is batted balls. So
I came out on my chat, and I said I don't like going for it here. I thought you take the points, make them score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, you did say that. Yeah.
And if it was done because he's pissed off at his kicker, I like it even less. Zimmer is God love him, I do. I think he's a great coach, but. His emotions run hot, and you put a microphone into him at halftime. After the game, maybe that's what he's going to say. And I think he softened it after the game, after they get the win, and he says, I think he says he still got the confidence of this kicker, but I don't know that this helps. Even one of the most accurate kickers in the history of the league to punish him. For the way you described it, which wasn't entirely his fault, I get that mentality that you shouldn't leave it on the shoulders of a kicker if you can do something different. But man, oh man, then I would have sprint out Cousins a little bit and give yourself some options.
Yeah,
you got to 2 yards. Send some people into the end zone and see if you can take the second level back with them, and then sprint out. If somebody comes open, you pop it to them short, or you run ahead and dive for a couple yards and get the first down. But
you're right, because anyway, what they did was they gave.
I didn't like the decision. The play, it's neither here nor there, I guess.
Well, the thing is that they put all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
Like you said, there was no backup plan. Either that Diggs was going to be open or he wasn't, but they're going to throw it regardless. And I don't think it is. You bringing that up raised something that came up in the chat that I wanted to ask you about, and I'm glad that you reminded me of it. And that was that, Dan Bailey, I think he struggled like his first game, but he's been spot on since. And it's not
absolutely.
I don't think it's fair to do that to him, and with kickers, a lot of it being between the ears, that's probably not the best way to do it either. But somebody had asked whether, these chats are amazing, and I like them because a lot of it reflects me and makes me feel like I'm less of a crazy Vikings fan. But it's funny after like the second missed kick to see all the apocalyptic stuff that we discussed with Greenway last week. People are just talking about firing coaches, so on and so forth. But somebody had asked whether or not Zimmer had lost the locker room, and I said, well, no, and I haven't heard anything about, I haven't heard that at all. But there has always been this undercurrent with Zimmer of him maybe saying things in the media that throw players under the bus or that are reactionary and involve players. And that was a big part of the Rhett Ellison, his dad Ricky Ellison, on the way out, saying it was toxic leadership. And Zimmer, to his credit, he brought in, I think, Greenway after he retired and said, "How can I be better?" And a big part of it was, well, you have to talk about the players differently. And as somebody who, gets to go in the locker room and who knows a lot of these players and Zimmer better than 99.9% of the public does. I mean, do you feel like this team now or maybe earlier in the season was 100% in on what Zimmer was and the team is doing? Were they still fully committed, or do you get a sense sometimes that they don't like that aspect of it? Or
I don't think so. I mean, it's certainly it's a good question to ask, because Zimmer kind of brought it to the fore last week after the Bears lost. He said they either don't listen or don't want to hear it or something, or don't care. And then that week, he went to a number of his leaders and asked them, are they asking him just what you said? Are they done listening to me, or have I lost them? And to a man, they all said no. So it's good, A, that he recognizes maybe something, B, that he's not so much maybe that he's saying it in the media, but he's willing to go and ask the players, am I losing it here? Am I doing something wrong? I mean, that's actually been a bit of a hallmark of his career. It's happened more than once. I think about 3 different times that he's had, because he is old school. His mentor is Bill Parcells, who was a bit of a taskmaster and a grumpy old man. And so I think that's where Zimmer's going to be coming from. It is a new age athlete. It's a new era. Yet that doesn't completely work. I mean, it garners respect to a bit, but I mean, I remember just coaching my kids in basketball, and I felt like at a time I'd call timeout late in the game, and I just said to him, I got nothing else. Go on. I've said everything I've said. These guys got to go out there and do it, and you feel like, I'm calling this time out, but I didn't want to call because I have nothing to say. So, I mean, I think that does happen where you can, if you're going to be in everybody's face, 24/7, they're just going to say the heck with you, because they know that it's easier to fire a coach than it is to fire a team. And so I give him credit for being on top of that and asking those questions and being a little self-aware and establishing this group of leaders that he can go talk to. I hope he hasn't lost them, because, boy, you can have a good team and who knows how good they are, and all of a sudden, things aren't working for him and might just make things go the other way. I mean, you wonder what happened early on in the season when they were playing this defense that might have had, quote unquote, too much volume, and they simplified it, and it helped. And now they're playing great again. That to me is a compliment Zimmer for being that self-aware to do that. But if you're doing too much screaming and it's constant, and whenever you don't see something go your way, you better take a look, because you might be falling on deaf ears. And at least he's asking the question.
And a lot of those things are a lot easier to swallow when you're winning, And in that same vein, they said during the broadcast that Zimmer actually called Cousins on Monday as he felt like something was off. And he asked him basically if the offense was too complex, if there was too much volume there. And Cousins, I think, basically said no, and said, those interceptions were on me, which was, I don't know, that the way I would have rather it been. There was an easy excuse for it, because then you can explain it and find a way to fix it. But, I feel like, personally, and from all the fans that I interact with, the season is very much not over. This team shows that when they are firing on all cylinders, they can really hang with the best of them. Granted, they won by 7 points against a team that's in disarray, but it's Green Bay. It's a division game. It was prime time. A lot of the monkeys that were on their back, they got rid of. And so I feel like, and I want to kick it to you to get the general sense on how you feel, but I feel like I did even last week when I said that, if they can eliminate mistakes, they can beat anybody, and they should have beat the Saints if not for mistakes. They very well could have beaten the Bears. The defense did enough, 1 touchdown, a few field goals. And so at this point, I still feel like this team can make a run, that the sky is the limit, and I'm I think more than anything, the Patriots game is going to be a huge litmus test, because somebody shared on Twitter, at Purple Pros, who I think wrote for the site last season. Brady's record at Gillette is just insane. And so losing there isn't the end of the world. Everyone should just kind of not chalk it up as a loss, but realize that hardly anyone wins there, especially in late November, early December. And but beyond that, I do feel like, having watched more of the other NFC teams out there, having witnessed them firsthand with the Vikings playing them, that this team can and has played with everybody. And if it really comes down to Cousins just consciously saying, I'm going to check the ball down to eliminate those mistakes on certain situations, I do think this team can make a run in the playoffs. I don't think this year is their year. I think they need to add a couple more pieces on the offensive line. I think that was the biggest outside of the defensive line getting pressure. The other part of it was the offensive line played maybe its best game of the year. And it showed what he can do, what Cousins can do when he's not running, but playing for his life, basically. Diggs and Thielen, they're amazing. Cook showed that he can contribute. We haven't even really talked about that. We'll get to that on Friday. But I'm pretty bullish on the Vikings again. Surprise.
Dust drills are back up. Yay!
How do you feel, though? I mean, do you think that this is... I don't know. Do you feel like this team could potentially make a run, or do you think that it's I mean, obviously any team can make a run, but realistically?
Well, they're in 5th spot in the playoffs right now if they ended today. If they lose on Sunday, and the the two teams that are outside looking in the hunt,
Seattle and Carolina, maybe?
Seattle and Carolina, and Seattle's playing San Francisco, and Carolina's playing Tampa. Those two should be in their games. If that happens and the Vikings lose, the Vikings are now outside looking in. So the Vikings, following that, will still have the hardest schedule. So it is a tough road to hoe, but it doesn't matter to me. I said a week ago they're still going to win, or they're still going to make the playoffs. I still feel like they will. They're starting to play their best ball from time to time, but it's another big prove-it game today. On Sunday, you have to have one of these two next road games, and then you win the final somehow, and you're fine. But get to 10 wins, and they'll be good. So I think they could. I think they should. And they're one of the still one of the better teams in the NFC, but. They have to do it, and like we've talked before, it's hard to get up for every game and to make it win. Hopefully, maybe that it comes down to that game against the Bears. What a fun game to watch. So
that's going to be such a big game. That Seattle game. Ugh.
I'm not as up and down as you. I've felt all season that they should make the playoffs. Looks a lot more difficult now. I don't know where this 80% chance stuff comes in, but
either do I.
They're factoring in all these other things. But if you look at the schedule, the Vikings' chances are absolutely kind of tough. They got 3 tough games, and they got 2 cupcakes. So, and even those won't be cupcakes. It's the best.
Is that Miami?
Miami and Miami here and at Detroit. And by then the Lions, the last game of the season, won't have anything to play for. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about the Miami Dolphins. It's these other 3 games they have to somehow win, and you better win them, because those are the kind of teams you're going to face in the playoffs. Because what does it get you if you, after going to an NFC title game, is you crawl in the back door of the playoffs and you get beat the first round? It doesn't do a damn thing other than make your draft pick even worse. So, I believe they will get there, and hopefully they'll be the team that looks like they're ascending at the end of the year, so that like the Saints were this year, and that if it doesn't happen this year, it's a couple of things, and next year it's good. So I'm always behind them, Joe. Until they're out, I feel like they have a chance.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it would be great for them to make some sort of run, just to have that good taste in their palate come next year, and hopefully they'll be able to draft or find a mid-priced guard that they can. And Easton will be back next year too, which is going to be huge. To get Compton out of there, since he's been awful. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, they have to go 4-1, maybe 3-2, depending on how things go. But like you said, I mean, if they lose some, like that Seattle game, that'll mean that they basically lost to all the teams that they would have faced in the playoffs anyway. So you're right. What's the point? And maybe we'll get a better draft pick. I don't know. But I wanted to thank everybody for the support. Again, we had a gigantic show on Friday that has been getting more and more clicks each day, and I initially thought that was because Swartzen almost came on the show and we had advertised it as such, but I don't think that's the case, just based on the way the analytics have been working. But it was by far our biggest show ever. I mean, there's about 750 people just on YouTube alone that checked out the site, and that might be because I've been advertising our YouTube channel a lot more. But it's super exciting. There's a lot of exciting things going on for our sites that hopefully we'll be able to announce in the next couple weeks. Some big meetings coming up. Keep an eye out for purpleterritoryradio.com. That is the third component. We have the 2 sites, and then we have the online radio station that has YouTube shows as well. It was big enough and enough of its own entity where I believe it needed its own site, and so we're going to be building that and basically having the biggest content network of anybody outside of maybe the Vikings themselves. We launched a Spanish language podcast last week, and we're up to 13 shows that are recording. We have a show every day of the week except for Saturday, and so it's just been amazing. We won't be able to do any of these things, without the support of everyone listening, and so I definitely wanted to thank everyone for that. Keep an eye out. I'm thinking maybe Swartzen will be on the show tomorrow night, which would mean he'll be on the Purple Journal podcast as opposed to Morning Joe's. Otherwise, we'll try to get him in on Friday at 9:30. But we'll be back doing Morning Joe's on Friday. Looking forward to that huge game against the Patriots. But thanks again. Keep an eye out for Purple PTSD and Vikings Territory on social media. Check the sites for all the latest coverage, opinions, analysis, so on and so forth. But we'll be back in a couple days. Skol.